It is Locked On Jazz for the 12th of December. 12-12 for you. A very coachable team we're seeing out of this Utah Jazz. We'll talk about the Minnesota and Denver losses. Plus, Will Hardy's pregame quote the other night comes to fruition, but also tells us a lot about his philosophies. Nickell Alexander Walker continues to grow. What is his future? And a Monday Trends edition. We'll touch on that. All coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free. We are available on all podcasting apps as well as on YouTube. Love the comments in the chat room going on in YouTube. Question today, what young player are you most excited for about the Utah Jazz? We're touching on that in our chat room today. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. Hope you're great. Snowy Monday morning here in Utah. And if you're wondering the unique outfit of a ski hat and t-shirt, it means that I throw a big jacket on when I snowplow, but I need a ski hat for it, so that I had already plowed the driveway this morning and the ski hat stayed on and went to the t-shirt. That's the answer. It looks stupid, but I have clearly not cared what I look like first thing in the morning when I chat with you on this program. Jazz lose twice over the weekend. I thought it was an interesting, Rudy's return probably just should make a mention to it. It was kind of exactly what I think everybody expected. The crowd gave Rudy all the appreciation for his years. Rudy impacted the game dramatically. We couldn't get to the basket at all. We took 2 shots at the rim in the first half of the game. Neither of them when Rudy Gobert was on the floor. We got better at it, which I'll get to here in a second, in the third quarter. And then, we can get all into whether or not there's an unwritten rule or not about the final play of the game and all the excuses that Chris Finch made for Rudy and the other. You just shouldn't make that play. It's just an easy, you can decide whether there's an unwritten rule or not and whether it was appropriate or not, and whether you just shouldn't make the play. Jared Vanderbilt shouldn't have made it in Minnesota. Zion shouldn't have done it the other night. There's just no need. The game's over. So it was, to me, the night of Rudy was actually almost Rudy's 8-9 year career in Utah all summed up as one, in the sense that, it was his hard work, his effort, he was dominant, and then he just somehow can't help himself. Anyone who's close to Rudy talks about how he just can't help himself. And we saw it so many times in the media with him, and we saw it so many other times in which he just was simply incapable of not, ruffling a feather. The Devin Booker press conference is the worst of them all. When he takes the shot at Donovan. Now, Devin Booker's playing defense, and then Jordan Clarkson and Donovan Mitchell have to have their press conference taking shots at him last year. He can't help himself. So I thought it was actually a perfect capsule of Rudy's career. It was fun. The crowd appreciated him. Great video. He deserves all that. And it was super. And he was really good. And then they lost the next night to Portland, which was strange. From a Jazz standpoint, what jumped out to me over the weekend was how coachable this team is. So we have the fortunate thing on the radio broadcast where we talk to one of our assistant coaches at halftime, and often they give us really, really good stuff. And Brian Bailey is terrific and a rising star as a coach in this league, Jazz assistant coach. And he, at halftime, the Jazz at halftime of that game were 17 of 24 against Minnesota. They had 2 shots at the rim. And they really were not playing particularly and actually, this might actually even be back to the Wednesday game against Indiana, now I think about it. They really weren't getting the shots you'd want them to get. And he talked about just a coaching execution change that needed to happen. It was the Wednesday game against Golden State, sorry. Too many home games in a row. Loved it. But against Golden State, when And the Jazz just simply, his comment was that the guards are getting in the lane. They're playing too fast. They're not under control. They're playing off one foot. They need to come in. They need to set both feet. They need to look out to find shooters. And I said, are the Warriors doing anything at the time to be able to take away what you're looking for? And he said no. And it was like, okay, like really clearly those shots are available. And if you go back and look at that game, if I have the right one, which now I'm doubting, if you kind of look at it, the Jazz in the first half of that game end up, I think, with like 2 3-pointers, and they hit 7 in the third. They just literally made an adjustment in the middle of the game. The same thing against Minnesota. We saw the Jazz took 2 shots at the rim in the first half of that game. Actually, neither of them when Rudy was on the floor. And then in the third quarter, they actually started. I asked the question at halftime, what's the answer here? And they're like, you just can't not attack. You have to get into the paint, if nothing else, you have to fully engage Rudy so he's occupied and then move it. And you saw the Jazz do exactly that in the third quarter of that game. Suddenly, the shot chart was totally different than it was earlier. And then overall, I thought in the game last night, if you want the specifics on that one, by the way, the Jazz in the third quarter of the game against Minnesota took 6 shots inside the restricted area, having taken 2 for the entire game prior to that. Like that's a pretty dramatic change. And then in the fourth quarter, they took another 5. So they took 2 in the first quarter. They took 11 in the second. That's where this group is just super coachable, and that's pretty fun to watch. And then against Denver, Will Hardy changes the starting lineup, takes Walker Kessler out, partially because him against Jokic is not a great matchup. Rudy had bogarted him on the first play of the game right underneath the basket for a dunk. Earlier this year when he played Joel Embiid used him as a traffic cone. Fine. Nothing wrong with any of these things. We actually would see later in this game that, there's the 4-play sequence where Jokic just pounding it on Walker Kessler, and Walker Kessler literally runs up the floor and says to Coach, I'm trying. And he's like, I got it, bud. No problem. You're trying. He's 2-time MVP. He's unbelievably great at what he does. I know you're trying. But you're a rookie and this is really hard. And Walker's doing a great job and he's going to be super. But there are times when it's not the right thing to play him right now, or matchups to have him have. And so Will started Jared Vanderbilt with Talen Horton-Tucker with the shorthanded group to really create kind of a havoc to the game. And they did exactly that. And then their halftime adjustments, they dropped 38 points in the second biggest third quarter they've had all season long. So we've really seen a really coachable group, which I think is really cool. And I wanted to just kind of point that out because I think there is a little level in this league where you sometimes wonder, are game plans being executed? Is the coach with this group? I thought for years in Oklahoma City, Billy Donovan couldn't execute a game plan because he had James Harden and Russ Westbrook. Now on the other end, when you have James Harden and Russell Westbrook, maybe you don't have to execute a game plan because you just go give them the ball and they're so darn good that it doesn't matter. And there's probably something to that. This panic you see on my face is the realization that I left my espresso in the other room. I have to get through the whole rest of the show without any caffeine injections. It's panic. So anyway, I thought that was the first thing. And, they lose both of them. I thought they played well. I thought they played particularly well in Denver to stay in that game the whole time. And then, I want to get to the Will Hardy quote of what he had to say before the game, because I thought it really came to fruition. And I don't have the exact quote. I'll explain why in a second. But I thought it came to fruition late in the game of how the Jazz lost yet again another close game without Mike Conley on the floor, and now going to 1-6 on the season in the clutch when Mike Conley's not available. That tells the story of this season right now more than just about anything. All right, we'll touch on that, what happened late in that game and some of the plays that kind of were foreshadowed by a pregame quote by Will Hardy before the game as we continue. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. It is the most wonderful buy of the year. Save thousands on the 2023 Silverado 2.7 liter truck. Also, 500% red tag bonus cash on all cars. $2,500 total cash allowance on that Silverado. So lots of different things going on, promotions to get near the end of the year. I believe there are some reasons why certain size cars are good to buy this time of year. Might have something to do with taxes. I think that law is still in place. The Tahoe and the Suburban classify for that. Those are the Chevy standards. The SUV lineup is fantastic, from the Trax all the way up to the Trailblazer with the Equinox Traverse and Blazer in between. And obviously the Colorado and Silverado trucks are one of a kind, as Chevy makes the best truck on the market. It's all at Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross, also in Logan. If you're going to stop by, please feel free to just hit me up at dlock09@gmail.com, and we'll get you your VIP experience. A while back, we used to tell you about a company called Truebill. It's now called Rocket Money. It's still just as cool, frankly. One, you could be wasting just a ton of money on subscriptions. 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about. Maybe for you, it's the unused Amazon Prime account. That seems hard to believe that it's unused. But more likely, it's a Hulu account or it's a subscription. Mine is to Bloomberg, frankly. That's the great. This app goes and tells you and keeps track of all your expenses, because it tells you whether every reoccurring payment, it notifies you so that you suddenly realize where all your money is going. And they are saving. Most Americans think they're spending about $80 a month on subscriptions. We're actually spending about $200 plus. So you could be wasting hundreds of dollars each month on subscriptions you don't even know about. Rocket Money will take care of that. Rocket Money's podcast, Talking Points 3, there's the app. We'll show you all sorts of things as well. It's called Rocket Money. It was formerly Truebill. The app shows you all subscriptions in one place, cancels them what you don't want. Rocket Money. You can find subscriptions you don't want to pay for. Also, you can just kind of monitor all your expenses. Go check it out. Rocket Money. I use it and like it. Get rid of the useless subscriptions with Rocket Money now. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Thanks very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Your second listen today, Locked On Sports Today. Plus, we should have a great game-to-game for you as well. So check those both out. So Will Hardy, before the game, I asked him, and unfortunately, we have a technical problem with our work, and so I can't get this press conference. I got up early this morning to download it, and it's not available. So I was going to play the sound for you. So now we're going to have to paraphrase, and I think I'll paraphrase correctly. So I asked Will Hardy before the game about the difference between like giving guys the ultimate freedom to just play, and at the same time that there is a construct by which you have to play inside of a team to win, and most players in the NBA actually have to narrow their game down to be able to be a solid NBA player. And I asked this to both Mike Malone and to Will Hardy, and the reason I asked it was because the Jazz were playing so many guys in different roles than they're used to. And the one I think is most interesting on this is Nickell Alexander Walker. And we'll get into him a little bit more in the show, but Nickell Alexander Walker kind of came into the NBA, and then his game went wide instead of narrow, and he went haywire. And now he's narrow focusing a little bit, and I think he's a way better player. So that's the premise by which I asked the question. I also just was curious on what Will had to say. And both Mike Malone and Will gave an interesting answer. You know, Mike Malone talked about, you can talk about what the team needs to give you, but what do you give the team? And he talked about it also as selflessness, and that in his case, he's really fortunate because Jokic is the most selfless player on the roster, and so therefore he sets the tone. But I think that's an interesting way that he talked about leadership. Will talked about, hey, you want the guys to play with the ultimate freedom, but they have to be self-aware. There's a point in the process here where we can give you as much freedom as you want, but if you're having a bad night and you're struggling, or you're not a particularly good shooter, you've got to be self-aware. And I thought what happened to the Jazz late in that game the other night is they lost their self-awareness. And they lost their self-awareness probably because it's late game, 5 minutes left. Jokic puts a putback in at the 5-minute mark. It's 105-104. And you suddenly have the Jazz trying to make plays that really aren't that natural. Their first possession's fine. Alexander Walker gets free throws. He makes one of the two. Then Gordon scores. Then Olynyk misses a left corner three that was a dynamite play by the Jazz. It was absolutely perfectly executed. And then it gets funky. Alexander Walker gets called for an offensive foul on a turnover. Then Alexander Walker has a bad pass turnover that goes out of bounds. So now suddenly we have back-to-back turnovers. Then Vanderbilt does the first one, kind of lack of self-awareness. And his lack of self-awareness is he's got the ball on the right elbow, and Malik Beasley makes a back cut which with 5 minutes left in the second quarter might be a worthwhile attempt, but with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter of a game that's you're down 5 and you can't afford to turn it over was just not the right play. And that's, you know what, Vando conducting at the elbow with 2:48 left in the game is a brand new experience. And a lack of understanding of, hey, how important those possessions are, where your risk analysis is, how you're going to make that, what you're going to do with that play. And he just tries to bounce one to a cutting Beasley through 3 guys. Next time down, Horton Tucker drives. I thought a drive that frankly lacks some self-awareness, like a little. Now, if you're Horton Tucker and you're looking around and you're on the floor with Nickell Alexander Walker, Horton Tucker, Vanderbilt, Olynyk, and probably Bees to close, maybe you are looking at this saying, okay, well, Bees is a shooter. Nickell can't get the ball right now. Vanderbilt's not beating anybody off the drive, nor is Olynyk. I got to drive and make a play. And so maybe that's totally fine, self-awareness. It felt a little forced to me. The shot clock, he had just blocked it on the other side. He brought it up. The shot clock was still early. And actually, I'm off a play on this one. On this one, Beasley, we bring it up early. Beasley hits Alexander Walker, and he hits a 3. So it's great. Now we're back down to a 2-point game. And then the next one is Alexander Walker. I thought off of Vanderbilt still, Horton Tucker pushes a little bit. We get the tip dunk follow. Beautiful play. And we get it there. Then Olynyk misses a 13-foot step-back jump shot on a possession that just didn't materialize. We were down to 17 on the shot clock. But again, kind of if you watch that play, there's some tough moments in there. Horton Tucker drives, gets fouled with 1:05 left. They don't call it. That's not anyone's fault. That's just ridiculous that foul wasn't called. Jokic killed him. I didn't see the last 2-minute report yesterday, but I'm hoping that they actually admitted that one after not admitting any in the Mark Davis game. And then with 34 seconds left in a 112-110 game, Talon you have Olynyk in the post being guarded by Bones Highland or somebody small, and Will's barking out signals, and Horton Tucker takes a 26-foot 3. Talon played a really good game, having not played a lot, but that one's just that's a self-awareness shot. You're a 25% career three-point shooter. And I get it. You look on the floor and you see that you're the guy who's got to be making plays, and you've been making plays, and probably fatigue's kicking in at some point. I'm not really critical in the sense or surprised by any of this. I think it's the reality, and that's how you learn and you get better. But there's a lot of time left on that clock still. You're a 27% career three-point shooter. I'm perfectly well aware, big Talon fan, of how much better he's getting shooting, but that's just not the shot you want at that moment. It's just not. And then rebound Caldwell Pope, and the game starts, the Jazz can't get it back. Alexander Walker misses with 3.8. So you run down that, and there's just a bunch of little turnovers and little plays that lack kind of that self-awareness of late game play. And that's what Will was talking about. We're gonna spread it out. We're gonna give these guys this, but they have to have some level of self-awareness to what they're doing. I thought it was just a really interesting comment that then came to fruition late. And again, I don't mean this I'm not trying to, I could have picked different plays by all the guys. So I thought they all played great, and I thought their execution of the game plan was super, and I thought their stepping up when guys were out was great, and that's just being put in a really, really hard situation late in games, and that's where we're 1-6 in those games. We're better, frankly. Nickell Alexander Walker has played better and better and better in those circumstances right now, and seems more controlled and has gotten into better sets, and we've had better offensive luck, and our turnovers are down in the last 2 games when he's been at the controls without Mike Conley. So to his credit, now we turned it over. I think we only turned it over twice in the final 5 minutes, maybe 3 times because of the offensive foul. So the rate's still high. I mean, we're just losing 2 or 3 possessions a night in the final 5 minutes, which is 20 to 30% of your possessions, and it's just super hard to win. So I think that's it. The other one on the Hardy quote that was really interesting, that he dropped in without being asked on that question. I told you what I asked him. Was he got in the fact that rookies have to earn minutes, that you're not being gifted minutes in this program, and that he doesn't believe in gifting minutes. So for all the people out there, and this is probably worth remembering for the next few years because our process is not over yet, is for all those people that are, I want Ochai Agbaji just to play. I want Walker Kessler just to play. I want the he literally said in this quote, we're not just gifting minutes without consequence. It was a really telling comment because frankly, it wasn't a part of the question, but it was a real insight into what he believes and how he believes and what he's going to do coaching. That you are not just going to give minutes because a guy was drafted in a position. They're going to get minutes because you earned them in practice or you earn them in the court. You're going to get opportunities because that's clearly what Will Hardy does. But you are not going to be gifted minutes without consequence. You've got to learn. We're trying to win every game, and you don't just get to go out and make a bunch of mistakes and have no repercussions for that. And I thought that was a really interesting comment, and one that, like, for all the people who are going to be clamoring for so-and-so to get minutes, and particularly if, we're below 500 and out of the playoff race and we should just play guys, we're going to play guys, but we're not going to do it without consequence or ramifications for performance. And I frankly think that's a good thing for the well-being of the Utah Jazz. But I thought it was the first time he's brought that up, and he wasn't asked about it. And so I thought it was a pretty clear message to everyone of, hey, you just aren't going to get minutes. In regards to Ochai, he's been a really slow starter throughout his career. He was a slow high school starter. He was a slow college starter. He's old for his age. Like he played 5 years of college. And he is, he's an older NBA player at this point at 22 years old. So you would like him to be probably on that scale a little readier than he seems to be right now. And he has not torn up the G League at a great level. And my only concern is, and on him, is what I always have said about young players, is I actually like young players who are making a bunch of mistakes. You would like to see them, you would like to see them have like mistakes are fixable. Non-mistakes, non-actions, are you just get quiet and it's hard to then make an impact. So I think you would always love to have a team, young, at least in my book, young players whose lines are, 1 of 8, 4 turnovers. There's a point where it's too much, right? I get it. But it allows you to be able to kind of alter that and believe he's going to be, like in the G League, he actually has committed 3 and 4 turnovers a game at times, trying to do things. I kind of like that. Because of the fact that it means that there's something to correct there. His lack of shooting in the G League is a little disturbing. Like, there's a lot of 2 of 9s, 1 of 7s, 3 of 8s. 3 of 8's not bad, but nights in his G League. So far, like, he's not, like, but I think it's really important. He's a slow starter both in high school and in college, to see where he goes and how he develops right now. He got an extended run in that game, and he hit 2 of 5 from 3, which is great. There was a stretch there where both he and Balbaro were on the floor and basically almost had 9 trillion outings, where they had 0, 0, 0, 0 across the board. And Balbaro does a lot of things I like, but his reluctance to shoot is really a problem. And you 17, you just can't like really play 17 minutes, take 1 shot, and have no points very often. Like that's at least Abaji took the 8 shots in 20 minutes. I kind of like that. Like, okay, you're willing to put it up. We can have some impact on that. Those are things you can fix. And Kessler is just going to keep developing. He's going to be really good. Like Walker. On the poll question day of which young player are you most excited about, I think the answer probably should be Walker. He's going to be really, really, really good. All right, NBA I want to talk about Nickell Alexander Walker, and I want to get to trends as well today on everything. Today's show is brought to you in part by our friends over at LinkedIn. Hiring is hard. Bigger problem with hiring. I actually love hiring and enjoy it and get kind of a rush out of it as someone running a company. But the bigger problem with hiring to me is that it is time consuming and it can almost paralyze everything else you're doing in the company as the president or CEO of the company. if you're a small company and you don't have a whole HR department. So that's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your jobs for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your jobs for free. You 100% certain you'll have access to the best qualified candidates. That's why LinkedIn Jobs does what it does. It's simple tools such as the screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with the right skills and experience. So you can quickly prioritize, interview, hire. Small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs the number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. And that's why. You get it done faster. You get it done with qualified candidates. It's all at linkedin.com/lockedon. That's linkedin.com/lockedon. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Thanks very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Greatly appreciate it. So my comment on Nickell Alexander Walker has always been this guy's just loaded with skills. He's got this amazing body at 6'6" with a great length. He has pretty good athleticism. He actually can play multiple positions. He can defend multiple positions. He's played point guard far better than I anticipated him playing it. Give him great credit so far this year. I actually thought that was the problem in New Orleans is they put the ball in his hands and then it kind of stymied him and got him almost into trouble. I would say you can see why New Orleans wanted to do that with him when you see him play point guard the last few nights. This kid's really got a lot of opportunities. The problem he had in his career is he literally couldn't put the ball in the basket. His 44.9 effective field goal percentage last year was one of the worst in the NBA. 50 the year before wasn't great, and 45.5 his rookie year wasn't good. Watching him play, the biggest problem I thought he had is he can get a shot off all the time. At 6'6", and shooting off the shoulder, he just has a constant shooting window available to him. And so the question to me was, could he stop taking bad shots? He just took so many bad shots a night that then he missed them, almost all of them, and then all of a sudden his rate of his shooting was awful. His first 2 years in New Orleans, he takes 22 shots per 100 possessions. He's now taking 16. That's exactly what I was talking about. Now, I don't think he'll ever be a great shooter, frankly. He's a 73% free throw shooter. He plays with so much arc on his ball that I'm not sure I buy that it can be a high-level three-point shot. Can he get it from, he's at 41 right now, which is crazy good. He's a career 33. Can he get it somewhere in the middle? Then if he can get somewhere in the middle, he's an incredibly viable NBA rotation player. And it's a great find for the Jazz. He's kind of up on all of his numbers. His steal rate is back up to where it was his second year in the league. His turnover rate is kind of right where it was his first and second year in the league. His assist numbers are rising back up to that. He's doing a lot of the same stuff. He's just doing it without as many bad shots. And this then, when you don't take as many bad shots, you then suddenly, all of your other skills, which are numerous for him, get accentuated and highlighted, and I think it's really exciting. And frankly, he's our second best backup point guard right now. When Mike doesn't have the ball in his hands, Nickell Alexander Walker is the next guy I want to have the ball in his hands. All right, let's get to, I always love this, Trends Monday, see who's doing what. New Orleans is killing it. I watched their game against Phoenix last night. So over the last 2 weeks, the top teams in the NBA in differential, some interesting names are going to show up here. 1, Boston, no surprise. 2, New Orleans, no surprise, they're 7-0. 3, New York. So New York is 5-2 in their last 7 games and suddenly hot. Memphis is 4th. That's without Desmond Bane, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Sacramento is 5th. Golden State is 6th. Cleveland is 7th, and Milwaukee's 8th. Utah's 15th in its last 2 weeks, right in the middle of the pack. 5 best offenses in the league are Denver, Portland, Boston, Dallas, and Washington. Phoenix is tied. And the Lakers, interestingly, are 7th offensively in the last 2 weeks. We are 9th. New Orleans, who will play Tuesday and Thursday. Tickets available to see Zion at UtahJazz.com. That should be a fun one. Are 8th. The teams that cannot score right now, Cleveland is the worst offense in the NBA over the last 2 weeks. Oklahoma City, Orlando, San Antonio, Atlanta, and Miami. And I've been watching Miami close game. We'll do close game late tomorrow. I've been watching Miami a bunch recently. They really can't score. 5 best defensive teams in the league recently are Memphis, Cleveland. That's why Cleveland's been good. New York. So New York is the 3rd best defense in the league right now. In the last 2 weeks, that's why they're playing so well. New Orleans 4, Boston 5, Sacramento 6, Golden State 7. Teams that are not defending at all are Charlotte, San Antonio, Phoenix, interesting, Indiana, Houston, and Portland. And the Clippers are next. So those are the trends over the last 2 weeks. Then we like to look at the last 10 games as our next one, as you might recall. And these always reveal like a little tiny things in there to me that are so interesting. I think that today so far has been the Knicks' overall play and the Cleveland Cavaliers' lack of offense has been the two that have jumped out to me. Over the last 10 games, the number 1 team in the league is New Orleans, then Boston, then New York, again, still there, Memphis, Milwaukee, and Brooklyn. That jumps out to me. I still kind of believe in Brooklyn as now that they have all their shooters. Watching them, Durant was just amazing late game the other night against someone we watched. Ron and I watched him on the plane after the games. He was just unstoppable. Best offenses over the last 10 are Boston, Denver. The Lakers are 3. The Jazz are 4. Anthony Davis has been unstoppable. Phoenix is 5. New Orleans is 6. Brooklyn is 7. Teams that can't score: San Antonio, Charlotte, Orlando, Cleveland again. Miami, that's probably another story in here. So the trends, Miami really can't score, nor can Atlanta. They're 25th in the league. Defense is the best in the league. Cleveland, the best of the last 10 days, followed by New Orleans. Memphis that's why Memphis is winning. They are the number 3 defense in the NBA over the last 10 days, 10 games. San Antonio, New York, back in there. Milwaukee and Boston. Teams not defending: Washington, Portland, San Antonio, Dallas, and Utah, along with Houston. So those are the teams in the last 10 games that are struggling the most are San Antonio, Charlotte, Orlando, Clippers, Pacers, and Pistons. So no big surprise anywhere in there. Those are your Monday trends. That is Monday Locked on Jazz. Thanks very much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Get you ready for the Pelicans. The number 1 team in the NBA is in the house, both Tuesday and Thursday. Tickets available both. Also, holiday packs available at utahjazz.com, and you get Jazz Notes whenever you buy those tickets. So jump aboard. Go over to utahjazz.com. Thanks so very much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. Go listen to Locked on Sports Today as your second listen.